Once again, I really want to welcome you to this program today. And as you are aware, and we are in a very challenging time, and a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown. And in Nigeria today, we are all on lockdown in almost every part of the country. And the pandemic, COVID-19, has really we have a geometric increase on a daily basis. And but in all of this, life still has to go on. We still have to do what we need to do. Quite a number of employees are working from home. A lot of names: teleworking, remote working. So whatever name that is called, it's what is currently going on. So in the midst of all that, there are a few things, quite a lot of things that employees are still required to do. And there are issues that relate to medical well-being, psychology, and you still need to lead your team on a day-to-day basis. And so when you look at all that is going on, we just have to be hopeful in terms of where we are going to. And so that is why we decided as an academy to roll out a series of what we call the COVID-19 series. And so last week, Wednesday, we commenced with, and so we were able to explore from the perspective of emotional intelligence. And we look at, a lot of areas that we thought might be very useful to employees at this time. And so we took the time to look at, the brain itself. At this time, there are a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. And so we just had to look at things like the brain, the cortisol. We also look at flow, how employees can actually continue to be present in the life of their subordinates at this time. But at the end of that program last week, I mentioned that emotional intelligence is a great skill, and understanding it from the part of your emotions is also very good. But what we found in literature and research is that emotional intelligence alone is not enough. It's not enough. And so there are a lot of skill sets, a lot of behaviors that employees would need, particularly at this critical time. And so one of those skills, behaviors that we think would be good for you to include in your repertoire would be a transformational leadership skill. And we were able to tie transformational leadership skills to the emotional intelligence skills that you already have. Like I also said last week, by the end of the day, I'm still going to tell you whether the emotional intelligence skills will be enough, or whether you will still need more skills. And so we're going to do that. And so please, as we move ahead, please, the chat button, please, we're going to utilize that. My co-host today, Mr. Okilo, is going to really be looking at that. So if you have any question, please just pop it up right in the chat. Just click the chat button and go to the chat window and drop it there. We'll be ready to answer all your questions with regard to the topic that we have today. And so without further ado, I would proceed immediately to share my slide for this program. So thank you very much. And I will say welcome once again. This is it's a time that from a psychological point of view, where people have a lot of different mental states. A lot of people are afraid of unknown. Quite a number of us, we have jobs today. But to be very frank, the uncertainty is that we don't even know where we are going to be tomorrow. Quite a number of companies in Nigeria today are still able to pay salary. But what we continue to hope, so I will continue to hope for the best, is that we are able to address this COVID-19 pandemic swiftly, and so that we can get on with our normal life. But as Dr. Anthony Fauci, an expert in pandemic disease in America, said that life might not be the same again, even when COVID-19 is over. And so it's good for us to be building some kind of competencies at this time, so kind of skill set. In this part of the world, quite a number of us have not been used to using virtual, doing virtual training. Like I said last week, that was actually the first time I was running that emotional intelligence training via a virtual platform. And so our lives right now, positively, we hope, will be influenced, whether in terms of education, in terms of the workplace and all that. And so I am hoping, because we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst, that this training is going to make quite a few impact. So let's move straight on into the general housekeeping for the day. So all participants will be muted throughout the duration of the program to ensure the best audio quality for all. However, the host will grant access as necessary, particularly the interchange between myself and my co-host. Then secondly, on joining the webinar, we expect please mute your mic and turn off your video. I can still see a particular video on. Please, if you can put your video off, I would really appreciate that. Please. However, if I want you to answer any question, I may grant you access as we make progress in the course of the program. So we are recording today's webinar training, and we will share with all participants a link to the program, and the PDF of the presentation will also be shared like we did for last week. During the presentation, if you encounter any audio issue, please refresh your browser and check your computer's audio setting. You can also log out and log back in if you run into technical issues. Please submit your questions anytime during the webinar training using the chat box, which you can access by clicking the chat button just below your screen. And so use headphones, which we always advise. We hope that everybody, so that you can get the best from this program. And so I think that with that, we will move straight away to, so this is the program we are running for the benefit of those who haven't seen it. It's Mastering Transformational Leadership in a COVID-19 pandemic time. And so one of the reasons this program is very dear to my heart is it was actually my dissertation. So I'm trying to show you, this is my dissertation that I did, SMC, Swiss Management Center, University in Switzerland, dissertation for my Doctor of Business Administration. I work on the effect of transformational leadership on employee job satisfaction and organizational commitment. And so it's a topic that is so dear to my heart, and that I worked for about 8 years now, and I'm continuing to be working on it. And so I believe I'll be able to share little of the knowledge that I've been able to acquire over the course of the time I've been conducting research on transformational leadership. So for a lot of us can connect with this. This is Anthony Village bus stop under bridge in Lagos. So what I want us to do here is I want I want to throw a question about how I want that question to be answered. Would be for if your birthday, because we can't really, it's more of a qualitative question, and we can ask everybody that is in this webinar to answer this question. So I will want those of us who have birthdays in March and April to just give us a perspective. This is Anthony Village bus stop in Lagos. For those of us who are familiar with Lagos, I just want those that have their birthdays, that had their birthdays in March, and those that had their birthdays in April, and also those that will be having their birthdays in the course of this month, April. I want you to go to the chart and put what is your perspective of this photo that you are seeing in terms of the scene that you are seeing in the popular Anthony bus stop. So those that had their birthdays in March and April, I just want you to give me next 30 seconds. Just give your perspective in terms of what do you see? What does it tell you? So thank you very much. Just the next 30 seconds, please. If your birthday was March and April. Okay. So maybe I'll add February, January. So if your birthday, January to April. So if your birthday falls within January, February, March, April, please get just what do you see? Particularly those that are familiar with Lagos and what you used to know about Lagos, Anthony Village. Okay, so thank you very much. I saw a question. Somebody said, can I access the side-by-side view? I said the side-by-side is go to top of your screen. You will see an option like, you will see view option. Okay, so why I asked that question was because the scene that we were all used to in Lagos, the buzz of Lagos, the traffic that we are all used to, most times, more often than not now, they are no more. And it tells us a lot of things about the times that we are in, and that these are not, it's not an ordinary time, it's actually an extraordinary time. So let's move to, this one is also a scene in Abuja, a street in Abuja. And if you see the scenery right now, you find out that it's also very quiet. And you can see the calmness. If you drop a pin right there, it's going to make a very loud noise. So this next video also is a 110-bed isolation center at Onikan, also in Lagos, in Nigeria. It also tells us that these are really, we are in a crisis time, and some would even want to say we are in a wartime. And so when you are at war, and even during the, the Second World War, some of the people that experienced it saying that I think the life we are actually experiencing now in terms of the impact of COVID-19 on the global landscape is like it's something that has never been seen before. And so it tells us, particularly those of us, many of us that are, right here, it's possible that we've never seen anything of this magnitude before. And so it tells us that we are really in a very, on what we call an uncharted territory right now. But, and it means that we need a lot of leadership, you know, to show leadership, to demonstrate leadership, particularly transformational leadership at this time. So, so for a lot of us, if you will find out that what we have here in terms of this pandemic, it started as a medical challenge, was a medical issue. But we can all see that the crisis has gone far beyond the medical aspect of our lives. Is got into you know, it's got into issues relating to what do you call it, financial, economy. It's got into education. It's got into religious life. Quite a number of us, we are not able to even, you know, go physically to our religious houses, our religious institutions, churches, mosque, and it has now made us to be doing what you would call streaming, live streaming of church services. And for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been, you know, joining my church service via Instagram and YouTube. So it tells you, and from a psychological point of view, is you know, particularly for us that are working class parents, we are very much used to the life where we are at work and our children are at school. And, you know, we are now confronted with a situation where we have to work from home. And while at the same time, we also have to take care of the kids. And a lot of bills have to be paid. And the issue of, you know, a lot of us right now, maybe we can do little of aerobics at home, but we are not able to do exercises. And what it means is that, you know, likelihood that, you know, our emotional well-being, you know, physical well-being, psychological well-being would face some challenges at this time, and rightly so. And so it's a time that we believe that, you know, leaders, particularly in organizations, will be able to pay due attention to quite a number of the areas that hitherto they don't even pay attention to. And so I won't really want to go into the details in terms of the current position of the global pandemic, COVID-19, but it's good to always reflect in terms of where we are briefly. Few weeks ago, what we heard was that maybe just few numbers of, you know, 3 persons in Lagos and Abuja were the cases that were recorded in Nigeria. And the index case being the Italian, which was the first index case in Nigeria. But today, as at yesterday, Nigeria has recorded it recorded 117. As at by yesterday, Nigeria recorded additional 117 cases of COVID-19, which brought the total to 782 in Nigeria. And just last week, we were just like maybe 200 and something. And so what it tells us is that we might actually be at the very beginning of this, you know, challenge, and that which there's a whole lot of vocabulary that has come up right now, which I'm going to mention. And so we might actually be at the very beginning of that. But different countries have their different, what you would call status at this time. We have different countries. And so from a global perspective, the case as at yesterday was 2,564 thousand plus in terms of number of cases globally, and the death rate, the number of deaths globally stood as at yesterday at 175. And in the United States, you can see the number of cases there, which was 816,000 and over 43 deaths. And so when you look at this, like the United States said that it's a number that if you look at even the crisis that they faced, which was September 11, it was over 3 million people, over 300,000 people, I mean, over 300,000 people that were actually died in the twin bombing at the World Trade Center and the rest. And so when you look at where we are right now, you find out that it's very shocking at the level that we are. And so with this, it gives you a perspective that there are a lot of things we need to do as individuals. Number one is that we need to take care of ourselves. Number two is that we need to also pay attention to our colleagues in the workplace, and it's very important. So the facts are obvious. And so let's move on to what we can do about it, particularly from a leadership perspective. And so there are a lot of things. I will leave some of those that relates to the medical individuals. But what can we do from individual perspective in terms of showing leadership at this time? And so with that, we will move to why we are here today. And so there are a lot of vocabularies that we are all associated with right now, and there's some of them are new. Few weeks ago, I don't think quite a number of us were familiar with these vocabulary: shelter in place, social distancing, community spreading, asymptomatic, pre-symptomatic, contact tracing, teleworking, remote working, vulnerable population, the vulnerable group, immunity and herd immunity, flattening the curve. So these are some of the new words that have come up. And so I'm happy to, if you can go to the chat, if you want me to highlight any of these, you can put it there and I'll be able to explain that when we have a break. So let's really continue to really go deeper into why we are here today. So the goals for today is to understand the full range model, the full range model. And I will try to shed light on when we say the full range model, the full range. What does it really mean from a leadership perspective when you say full range? What does it mean? Try to understand what transformational leadership is and the step to improve transformational leadership. Understand how to use transformational leadership to behaviors to impact subordinates and colleagues. And we'll be able to talk about some of the experts who have helped to discover transformational leadership and the importance that they attach to transformational leadership. And so this is our goal for today. By the time we are able to do that, it was our intention to also talk about what you would call transactional leadership and explain the dimension. But what we came to realize is that the 1.5 hours won't be enough to do all that I would have wanted to do. So we will focus on just one part of what we call the full range leadership model, which is transformational leadership for today. And so there are 8 sessions that we have planned, like I've said, but the bit of transactional leadership, I will take my time to explain the concept and what transactional leadership is, what we need to look out for, how we need to be careful, what we need to watch out for with regard to transactional leadership, as we continue to try to be better transformational leaders. But in terms of the dimensions, we will not be treating it in detail in the course of this program. So Lazarus Fair, which is sometimes is also taken as one of the transformational leadership dimensions, and sometimes it's treated as a separate dimension of leadership, would also not be treated in detail. But I will take my time to explain what it is and how you can, move from that kind of leadership and move to AI. Then I'm going to share a document with you as we progress on the falling domino effect, which is more like a cascading effect of leadership. And for those of us who were in the program last week, we talked about the role of the cortisol and how leaders need to understand the cortisol, and that if you understand the cortisol, you would be able to know when your subordinates have expressing some emotions, particularly during these crisis time. And so emotions which might have resulted from accumulated stress, because I said the adrenal gland, which is where the cortisol is always on the on mode. And I also talk about the responsibility of the leader within the team or within an organization to move the subordinates into the flow state, that state where employees perform at their best and where they feel at their best. And we talked about that. So we're going to look at the falling domino effect, just a way of trying to tell us that leaders have a lot of role to play with regard to when you are navigating through crisis time. For those persons that might be here who are risk practitioners and a crisis manager practitioners, and they will understand, in a crisis time, the role that the leader would have to play, whether be it a country, be it a state, and we can see the role that Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Lagos State, is playing with regard to the management of COVID-19 in Lagos. And so it's something that I will share the document. It's a paper that was written by a great scholar in the area of transformational leadership. And so at the end of the day, if we have time, we'll just take a very simple case study. We have our group, we'll split ourselves into a group, then I'll be able to share the case study for us. Maybe this case study is going to take about maybe 10 minutes if we have time. So leadership really is really about influence. That is leadership. For those of us who are students of management, who are management scholar, you can see that the difference between leadership and management. So management is really the process, the ability for an individual who might be a leader occupying a leadership position within an organization is able to move men, material, and people in terms of men, material, and resources to be able to move them to achieve a particular goal. And so that is more of what a manager would typically do. And so manager will talk about organizing, they will talk about planning, they will talk about directing, controlling. And so those are things that managers would typically do. And so how they do is how to mobilize people, how to, move their subordinates to be able to achieve certain goals within their organization. But leadership really is that goal that needs to be achieved. How is the leader, or how has the leader be able to galvanize the people, influence the people to believe in that goal, and not only believe, work, assiduously towards the achievement of that agreed goal. So that is what leadership is. So when you have one person, who is now a leader and is able to influence another person or a group of persons to achieve that common or agreed goal, that is what we call leadership, is actually at play. So that is what leadership is. And it's good for us to have a kind of understanding of, from a very high level of what leadership is. But let's move to really talk about certain things. And for this one, I would ask another question about this page. So I just want all of us to pay attention at this page. So Bernard James McGregor Burns, was the first person that talked about the word, that used the word transformational leadership. It was James McGregor Bonds in 1978. He was the first person that that used the word transforming leadership. In that particular book he wrote, he didn't use the word transformational. And so we're going to share some light how we came to transformational leadership from the very beginning, which was so when I was reading that book, I came to realize that there were a few things that struck me very well. And part of it also is that, let me also show you. So this is the book by James McGregor Bonds, which is leadership, the one that first of all used the term transformational leadership for the very first time. So this is the book. And so I want us to look at this page, read what you can read there as much as you can. And I also want, I want us to, for those of us that our birthdays fall within June, between June and October, to just share your perspective in terms of what does this remind you, this page. This is 1978. Take a look at what you can see there, and particularly if you are a Nigerian and you understand leadership from a Nigerian perspective. I just want you to, not bias now, but just tell me, what do you think about what James McGregor Bonds captured on that page 1, 2, and 5 of the book that I showed to you, this book, Leadership. So I want you to go to the chart and put what do you think about that. So everything that you can see there. Yes. So read 1, 2, 3, 4. Just take a good look at it. So 30 seconds. Or let me leave it at 1 minute because it's a very interesting one. Okay, so no, I can see some of the comments, but after the particular session, we'll go there. So I'm sure my co-host is is actually taking care of that. So I don't want us to, so I want us to make progress. So we'll get back to that. We'll come back to it. So, so thank you very much for this. And so let's move on. So in 1978, James McGregor Burns was looking at leadership from a perspective that was not, that has never been done before that time. And so what he observed was that leadership was being looked at separately, and followership was being looked at also separately. And he noticed that people were, a lot of focus was trying to look at what leadership, what leaders, what they do. If you have followed the what you call it, the leadership models, or the leadership approaches, or the leadership theory, from great man to trait, to skills, to behavior, to situational, to leader-member exchange, to charismatic, to servant, to authentic, to then transformational leadership, full range. If you look at it, you notice that what people were doing then was just focusing on leadership, and they were paying little attention. And even those that even discussed leadership were just followership, were looking at followership in isolation and not trying to see the connection between leadership and followership. And so he now realized that no, that it is important for him to share perspective. However, his own perspective was really on what you would call political leadership. And so when transformational leadership started in 1978 by James McGregor Burns, his focus was not really organizational leadership. It was actually political leadership. And he was referring to people like Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi. He was talking about Hitler and other great men at that time. And so it was really focused on the political side of leadership. But when I read that book, I noticed that some of the things that I was expressing in terms of, we search eagerly for leadership, yet seek to cage and tame it. You find a lot of organizations today that, oh, we are looking for leaders. But when leaders come into organization, sometimes people don't even want them to operate. They are stifled and all that. So at the end of the day, I found out that even this book, 1978, is still as relevant today in the leadership context. And so with this, we will move to the next slide. So there are a lot of leadership models. Normally, when we run this program face-to-face, transformational leadership, we normally take time the first day to take participants through the gamut of the leadership models, right from the great man approach to leadership, which is that the great man model believes that leaders were born and not made, and that they also believe that human beings have some features, some innate ability that differentiate the great people from the great. And so they believe that you have some, traits, some features, some ability that are inborn that, that makes Mr. A greater. And what happened with the great man theory was that it was more biased toward the male. And so the great man was kind of saying that you can only find that kind of ability in men. And so when the great man theories of leadership started, there was no place for a woman. So greatness was only associated with women. And so the modification of that was now the third theory, which is also believed that leaders are born and they are not made. And so what it means is that leadership cannot be learned. And so they believe that people who were military officers, people like the Julius Caesar, and those were great men, and soldiers who were men of valor at that time. So they were associated it with. And so, but when it came to traits, they believe that you have this innate characteristics that differentiate the leader from non-leaders. However, the trait theory now also brought to the fore that this can actually be, women can actually have this ability as it were. And so they moved to the behavioral approach. For those of, people who have read a lot about the behavioral approach, you have the Michigan, University of Michigan, you have the Ohio, and those were the schools at that time. Then from there, you move to the situational approach, which was Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard. So for those that have done the situational approach to leadership by Ken Blanchard, so himself and Paul Hersey were those that found. And you have the path goal theory that came up, and you have the leader-member exchange. You have the servant leadership model by Robert Greenleaf, which is going to be the last of this program we're going to have in this series, which is on the 6th of May. And you have the authentic leadership. And the authentic leadership, you have the Bruce Value and his team that talk about the theoretical aspect. And you have the former CEO of Medtronic, who is an Harvard business school professor right now, who dealt with the practical side of the authentic leadership, which is going to be the program we'll be looking at next week. And the charismatic leadership, which commenced by House and Kanugo and another of his colleagues continue with the charismatic leadership. And now, after charismatic leadership, a combination of charismatic leadership and some other leadership model, which is actually became what was that metamorphosed into what you call the full range leadership model, particularly transformational leadership. I just to give a brief background of how we have over time migrated from where we are, from great man in the early 20th century to where we are today in the 21st century, where transformational leadership, authentic leadership, servant leadership have become what I call the 3 musketeer leadership behaviors that are the pinnacle of the behaviors that every leader aspires to be. But that is not to neglect the earlier approaches to leadership. Like I said, during face-to-face program, we used to share some light how some of those earlier leadership models are still very relevant today in our life, particularly the skills-based approach that talks about what they call technical skills, human skills, and conceptual skills, and how you metamorphose in your career life, right from graduate training as in terms of technical to trying to understand humans and trying to learn managerial skills and move to conceptual skills where you begin to talk strategically, be at the most strategic part of the organization, set strategic vision and goals for your organization. But we really want to focus today on transformational leadership, and I guess we're going to have a great time. So before we make progress, I will want us to, I will stop sharing this slide so that I would just want us to look at some of the comments that we've had in the chat up to this time. So at this point, I would want to ask Okilo to please help to.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to get access to them.
So if there are questions that have areas that right from the first photo that I displayed. Then if it's also what I talked about for those birthdays from January to April, and the one from June to October, questions relating to that.
I don't think we don't have much on that. There's only one comment.
Okay.
But there's a question here that's interesting by Zenera Alau.
Okay.
It says, towards achieving transformational leadership, which should take precedence? Is it EQ or IQ? Or is it a balance of both? So if it should be a balance of both, in what proportion?
Okay, thank you very much. But I want you to repeat that question again. So I want to make sure that I'm answering that question to the best of my ability. Please, please,
Okay.
can you repeat the question again?
Okay. Okay. Towards achieving transformational leadership,
Okay.
we should take precedence.
Okay.
Is it emotional quotient or intelligent quotient, or is it a balance of both?
Okay.
So if it's going to be like a blend of both, in what proportion? Which one should be higher?
Okay. So thank you very much for that question. And I got the name as whether is it Mr. Alao or Miss Alao?
Yes.
I'm not. Hello?
It's from Mr. Alao.
Okay, Mr.
Zinera.
Alao. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that question. So when we talked about when you talk about emotional quotient, which is same as intelligent as emotional intelligence, it has its own what you call competencies, and the competencies of emotional intelligence, they are complementary to transformational leadership competencies, or what you call behaviors. And if you remember, for those that were in the last program, I said that having EQ skills is great, but EQ skills alone is not enough. You will need other behaviors, other skills. And so transformational leadership has its own set of dimensions, skills that you need to develop. And we are going to unpack them as we make progress. However, having a high EQ, intelligent quotient, or being a leader who has a very high emotional intelligence capability can also help you to regulate what you call your relationship with yourself and others, which would aid and enable transformational leadership. And if you also look at EQ's competencies, you will find out that quite a number of them, they are interwoven with some of the dimensions of transformational leadership. But when we look at separately now EQ, when you take EQ, if you look at Daniel Goleman's book, which is Emotional Intelligence, Why It Matters More Than IQ, which was published in 1985, you will realize that Daniel Goleman was talking that EQ was twice in terms of influence when you compare it to IQ. However, from a research perspective, empirically, particularly Meyer, Salovey, and Caruso, who actually did a lot of work on what you call the ability-based model of emotional intelligence, could not find any evidence to show that EQ was twice as much influence to individual leaders when you compare it to IQ. And so the conclusion is that your emotional brain has three elements. It has the autonomic brain, it has your emotional brain, which is where your amygdala is and where your hippocampus is, and so which is where you use to relate with people. And that is also where, when you are low in emotional intelligence or EQ, you begin to experience a lot of amygdala hijack. And your IQ, which is the rational brain, the cortex. And so what we now said is that for you to be creative as an individual, it is important that you develop your intelligent quotient, which is IQ, and your EQ. And so the totality of your brain, which is utilizing your emotional brain, which we talked about in the last training, and your rational brain, which is your IQ, and your autonomic brain, which you use in breathing, in sleeping, your heartbeat, totality is what you call the creative brain. And so you need to put your creative brain at work. And that's why we said when we were concluding the program for last week that having EQ and IQ is not alone. There are other competencies that are not mutually exclusive. They are actually mutually dependent. And so when you have IQ, you have EQ, you have you in your repertoire, you have the transformational leadership behaviors, then you would have, be able to take yourself to a higher level in terms of how you relate with yourself and with others in the workplace. And so EQ and IQ and transformational leadership, they are not mutually exclusive. However, they might be mutually dependent, because if you understand emotional intelligence, it can help you to master transformational leadership. If you understand transformational leadership, it can also facilitate your level of understanding of emotional intelligence. I think that is how I will put it. But like I've said, at the end of this program, we will even know whether just having your EQ and transformational leadership, if it's sufficient, and if those two, if they are in your toolbox, is that the be all and all that you will need as a leader to navigate through the workplace. And we're going to be able to review that at the end of this program. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. In reaction to the question you asked about the impression they have about the work done in 1978, the same Mr. Leo was saying that that work was studied in 1978 is the current situation we found ourselves in Nigeria. The fact that we seem not to understand the roles of leaders. He put in brackets sheep. That is the roles of leaders and leadership, and followers and followership. That's from Mr. Lau. Yeah. Then second person said, that is from Femi. The world for a long time has been in search of irrepressible leaders. Interestingly, the search is still on.
It's still ongoing.
So this is suggestive that whatever we are doing now, we are still heading to a desired situation.
Okay.
Then there is no name to this, but it's coming from 0530, maybe the way the person named the device he used to connect. It shows that lack of true leaders is a common phenomenon, and the few that have occupied the leadership role abuse the powers thereon. And reaction from Leko, leadership is a rare quality that its standards cannot be substituted. Having people who do not have these qualities explain the reason why we are where we are. However, we need to keep seeking those individuals, in brackets, born or made, who possess these qualities.
No, thank you very much. I think let's move on. Okay. Right? Yes, let's move on. All right.
All right.
Okay. Thanks very much. Because time is fast spent. So before I move back to the slide, I want to launch a poll. I need us to take about 3 polls, and please. So it's going to take us just 1 minute to take each of the polls. So about 3 questions. So I want us to take that just within the next 3 minutes. Then we move back to our slide. So I'm launching the poll now. So we'll take the first one, the second, and the third, and we'll be able to display it for us to see. So thank you very much. So I'm launching the poll right now. So thank you very much. Okay, so 30 seconds would end the. So 30 seconds.
Sorry, I would like you to attend to this question from Mr. Lucky. I think it's interesting.
Okay.
Maybe while the poll is going on, we could just quickly attend to it.
Okay.
He said that I heard you using the word subordinate. In modern workplace, the word is considered degrading and counterproductive. Instead, progressive organizations use the term associates. So could you explain the implications? What does this mean in a workplace?
Okay, that is quite an interesting one. Okay, so I think there's what they call universal application. There are things that are what they call, it has universal applicability. And so when you use the word direct reports, if you use the word subordinate, if you use the word follower, those are words that have what you would call, so 3 words I've used now. I've used follower, I've used the direct reports, I've used subordinates, I've used colleague. So those are words that are generic, as in they have what they call universal understanding and application. However, when you use the word associate, then it now begins to talk about context. And so my own understanding is that when you use the word associate, it might be in terms of certain organization, that is what they use. And so that is their context, right? In some jurisdiction, they still use the word follower, but follower mostly, if you look at James McGregor Bonds, he actually used the word follower and leader. And from a political leadership context, leadership and followership is still an acceptable kind of nuances. But from an organizational perspective, and if you look at the slide, we've intentionally removed, try as much as to just remove the word followership, right? And so when you use the word associate, so for example, in certain organizations, when you say associate might actually mean a grade. Associate might mean a level of an individual. So when you say this person is an associate, it means that that is the job grade of the person. Some might give it another name, you know, whichever way, but there are what we call context to a certain organization. So generally, subordinate, so I normally like using the word direct report. So when I did my research, I prefer the word direct report because it is easy to know that every employee has a line manager. And when you are a line manager, you have a direct report. However, when we are doing research that we want people that are not directly your direct report, we use the word subordinate in a broader sense, which means that people that report to you both directly and indirectly, they are your subordinate. Then we can also use the word colleagues when we are talking about, it might be your workplace colleagues. They are not necessarily your subordinate in terms of the organizational hierarchy, but you work in the same place. So associate is not, for based on my understanding, is not something that is what you call a general practice. It's not what you would call also a leading practice. And so that is how we look at it. But again, if it is something that is gaining momentum, then it's something that I think as a matter of time, we might get there. But then, as a researcher, I also look at it in terms of when you conduct research, you also don't want things that will be confusing to people. And so I think I will leave it at that. And I hope that explanation would help.
Yeah, it's quite okay because it's contextual. If it's what is applicable in your organization, and it depends on the employees you are working with. Yeah. If everybody has a PhD, even though there are some differences in cadres, you can use associates so that everybody will have that sense of belonging. So you don't apply it everywhere. There's an observation on the pool.
1 minute. Sorry. It's also good for me to stress that when you're also using words like, associate, and so I always say from a research perspective, it's always good to know whether is there any research paper that have tried to work on it. And so on the basis of that, I cannot begin to look at what are some of the empirical findings. And so that substantiate that. And people cannot begin to connect with it. It's always good to have a source of empirical underpinnings to such.
All right.
Thank you.
There's an observation from Rafi Bakare on question number 1.
Okay.
He said, "Do not specify if we have not worked at home before, because it's important. You know, people are seeing this pandemic for the first time. So many people have never worked from home for the first time." Okay. So I think I just said. Then thank you, Ejike Ojukwu, for telling us that you are 0530. Thanks so much.
Okay. So
there's one.
Okay. No,
there's one. No, go ahead.
We need to move because time is not on our side. Let's move to the slide.
Okay.
So please, we can always, we can always take some of those questions offline, or if we still have time at the end, right?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so let me share this slide once again. Okay, so the full range leadership model, like as you've seen it depicted here, is what was done by the men that took over from James McGregor Bonds. James McGregor Bonds in 1978 laid the foundation. So he's saying that there are two kinds of leadership that he has observed. And he wants the two kinds of leadership to be connected. So one of them, he said, it is what they call transforming leadership. And we're going to look at his own perspective, what transforming leadership means. And he said the other one is transactional leadership. And if you look at the name transactional, it actually literally what it means. It means a leadership that is based on exchange of transactions. And so when he said it, he did not develop any model to test, to assess, to conduct any research on transformational leadership. And so in 1985, Bernard M. Barrs, who was a very great scholar of blessed memory, now did a lot of work, and he now came up with what we call the full range leadership model. And so in 1985, when he started as just what you would call charismatic, and as what you would call the transformational leadership dimension, and it has what you would call management by exception, what you call active, and at that time. However, over time, he refined the transformational leadership model to include what you would call the 4 I's, which is individualized, idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and idealized influence. And sometimes too, you will see 5 I's instead of 4. And so the 5th one is that most researchers normally split what you would call the dimension of idealized influence into attributed, which we call the emotional side of the leader, and the behavior as the charismatic side, that we are a leader who is able to set vision, who is able to connect with subordinates. And so it was split. So in certain models, so that is why I took my time to display them in different categories. So you have the active and the passive. And so we're going to move on. So I showed them. So if you look at this one, you can see that this one that I've displayed now is actually 5 I's. And so in this one, it includes idealized influence, attributed, and behavior. It also included inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Then the transactional leadership dimensions were also the management by exception passive, management by exception active, laissez-faire, and contingent reward. that make up what they call transactional leadership. So let's move on. So if you look at this, Avalio and Bars also try to demonstrate to say that, like the question that was asked about IQ and EQ, he said if you have more of IQ, transformational leadership behavior, so if you exhibit more of transformational leadership behavior, it means that you are more of an effective leader. But if you exhibit less of transformational leadership behavior, you will be more what you would call seen as a less effective leader. And so it believes that when you have more of transactional leadership and less of transactional leadership, you can be referred to as an optimal leader. But let's move on. So what is transformational leadership? Like I've said, McGregor Bonds was the one that tried to coin the word. But this word that I'm using here have been paraphrased because James McGregor Bonds did not use the word transformational leadership. He used the word transforming leadership. So transformational leadership occurs when an organizational leader, so most of us that are here right now, we are line managers. So when we engage with our subordinates or direct report in such a manner that the leader and the subordinate raise one another to a higher level of motivation and morality. And so if you connect with your subordinate, you are able to go beyond the normal transactional. Okay, I did your appraisal and you get your score. On the basis of that, you'll be compensated. If I want to deprive you of certain compensation, or your organization pays you salary, and so for the work you've done, those are transactional. And so James McGregor Bonds was saying that we should take leadership beyond that level and begin to move at a higher pedestal. And he described it by saying that in terms of the hierarchy, the Maslow hierarchy of need, that a transformational leader should be able to take his or her subordinates to what they call the higher needs rather than the need at the lower needs. And so that was the explanation he gave. So a transformational leader does not only motivate his or her subordinate by exchanging reward, for performance or service render, but by also engaging, arousing, encouraging, motivating, inspiring, educating, coaching, training, mentoring that leader. But the caveat that James McGregor Bonds actually included was that everything that we do must have what you call moral foundation. There must be some level of morality. For James McGregor Bonds, if your transformational leadership is not to benefit both the subordinate and the leader together, then it looked at that as a one-sided kind of leadership. And he gave example of Adolf Hitler. That Adolf Hitler, he had a lot of followers, but Adolf Hitler, James McGregor Bonds said, he cannot, even though he has charisma, and he said that he cannot regard somebody like Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein, as transforming leaders. And so that was the very foundation to say a transformational leader must be able to connect beyond the exchange in the office between you and your direct report or your colleagues or your subordinates in the workplace. And so you say transformational leadership must imbibe moral and ethical values. For him, he said that a leader cannot be said to be transformational or transforming if it does not has a moral what you call underpinnings. And so Bonds' proposal, transformational leadership looks for potential motive in subordinate. It's transcendental. It goes beyond what you do in the surface, seeks to satisfy higher level needs and engages the full person of the subordinate. So you look at the total person in terms of, I've seen, in research where some leaders believe that, oh, why am I at all even showing concern for my subordinate? Look at this COVID-19 time. So for example, if you have subordinates, how are you present in their lives? No, leaders believe that because we are now working at distance, working from home, teleworking, you are not present. And so what kind of, and part of the one you also need to do is, do you still maintain what you call the normal boundaries with your subordinates. So for example, do you just wake up now because he's working from home and send meeting requests without even clarifying, which is what you would have been doing in the office, right? Do you ask, how are you doing? Your kids, how are you coping with them? Like right now, if your subordinate is at home and your subordinate is supposed to be on the call and you see the kids come along, are you able to say, oh, hello to the kids, you know, how are you doing? Make the kid part of your process rather than, you know, wanting to keep to your normal official formal, oh, your kids must not interfere. And so those are some of the things that would likely play out at this time. So by the time, so it's so bullish about moral leadership. And so, but transformational leadership is now an offshoot of the full range leadership model, which comprised the transformational leadership element and the transactional leadership element. So let's look at the components. I've said transactional leadership, transformational leadership, and laissez-faire that actually make up what you call the full range leadership model. But transactional and laissez-faire are what you call the lower level in the continuum. And I will explain why transactional and transformational leadership, they are two extremes of a continuum. But when in 1978, when James McGregor Burns was talking about transforming leadership, he saw transforming leadership and transactional leadership as either or. For James McGregor Burns, they are not to be imbibed. They are not behaviors that a particular leader should have together. And so you are a transactional leader or you are a transformational leader. So to James McGregor Burns, you cannot be both a transactional and a transformational leader. So what are some of the features of James McGregor Burns? What are some of the features? It is based on mutual reciprocal relationship. It is believed that you need to have a sound relationship between a leader and a follower, or a leader and a direct report, or a line manager and a direct report. You must promote high level of conduct and ethical aspiration. James McGregor Burns does not talk about anything transformational leadership without bringing what you would call ethical values and morality. It's initiated solely by the former leader. And so James McGregor Burns believes that it is only a former leader that initiates what you call transformational leadership. And transformational leadership is that kind of leadership that is focused on intrinsic motivation. And so, for example, we said education has both intrinsic and extrinsic value. And so people go to school because, like Socrates said, that the human brain was empty, that it was education that made the mind to be filled. And so people begin to know what is right from what is wrong because of the impact of education. And we call that the intrinsic value of education. That education in its own right, it has a lot of value because it makes you as an individual a better person. Same way, transformational leadership, when practiced, can bring what you would call great environment, team bonding, great camaraderie, great teamwork, great emotional relationship, great nurturing relationship, great rational relationship. But he saw transactional leadership as more what you call intrinsic value, like education. So we go to school because when you get to school, you have hope, getting a better job, being able to earn money, and be able to take care of things. So it is transactional. It has what we call extrinsic motivation. What we call as a means to an end. Education being as a means to an end is what we call the extrinsic value or the extrinsic motivation, and the intrinsic value that education by itself, in this instance, transformational leadership and its dimensions bring fulfillment by itself. So it's also an end to itself. So that is some of the features that James McGregor Burns actually defined. But in 1985, which is this book by Bernard Bass. This was the Bernard Bass book, Leadership and Performance Beyond Expectation. And so this is the book that Bernard M. Bass used to now take transformational leadership to a higher pedestal. And so what he did, he described transformational leadership. So, but one of the challenges that James McGregor Burns had with Bernard M. Bass in the early in mid and the late 80s was that Bernard Bass did not believe that there should be any issue relating to morality when it comes to transformational leadership. For him, when you exhibit charismatic behaviors, when you are high in charisma, when you are high in intellectual stimulation, when you are high in individualized consideration, he believes that irrespective of your level of morality, you should be regarded as a transformational leader. And there was a beautiful scenario that took place. James McGregor Bonds, Bruce Avalio, Bernard Bass himself, and some other experts, they went to Germany, converged in Germany, and they began to brainstorm on transformational leadership. And they tried to convince Bernard Bass to say that, look, a leader like Adolf Hitler should never be glorified, and by calling him a transformational leader. And so at the end, Bernard Bass came to the conclusion and agreed with the other scholars, including James McGregor Bonds, that he's going to toe their line by saying that any despot, autocratic leader, even though if that leader exhibits the traits, the behaviors, the characteristics of a transformational leader, that leader would not be regarded as a transformational leader because that leader is deficient of morality. And so because of that, he not coined the term that a leader who has all these behaviors, who exhibits all the behaviors of transformational leadership, but does not have the morality, does not pass the morality test, will be called a pseudo-transformational leader. And the one that that meets that would not coin it as the authentic transformational leader. So thus a leader could not be truly transformational unless his or her leadership has a footing in morality. So that was Bernard Bass' position. So Bass' proposition was that Bass developed the model and the means for measuring. So Bass now took a further step to develop what you call the models that we use today all the models that we use today to measure transformational leadership. And now they were so another scholar too, Bruce Avalio, who wrote one of the books here. This is Bruce Avalio. He's also a great scholar in transformational leadership. He was actually also in that meeting, and he was a contemporary and professor in the same school with Bernard Bass. So they sat together and did a lot of work, and they designed the what they call the multi-factor leadership questionnaire, the MLQ, which is the global gold standard questionnaire for measuring the full range leadership model. So there's a whole lot in terms of what Bernard Bass brought in. He coined the 4 I's and even the 5th I. And so 3 interrelated ways by which leaders could transform their subordinates. So he tried to say that as a leader, you have to raise the subordinate level of awareness and level of consciousness about the importance and the value of task outcome, as well as to achieve such outcome. You have to induce subordinates to transcend their own self-interest for the sake of the organization or team. By activating subordinate higher order needs. So those are some of the things that Bernard Bass believes should be present for an individual to be called a transformational leader. So we've said so much about transformational. So I will just highlight transactional leadership a little bit as we begin to try to round off this program. So the relationship of most leaders and subordinates are transactional. And so even in our workplace today, a lot of the relationship that we have between leaders and subordinates are transactional. And some leadership, people who occupy leadership position do not see why they should connect with their subordinates at a higher level. And so they are just comfortable to leave their relationship at a transactional level. So for Bond, the transactional leader motivates subordinate by exchanging with them rewards for services rendered. Okay, we employed you here, you have to do your job, and once you do your job, you are being paid for your job, so what else do you need? And you don't talk about the training, the development, you don't discuss, okay, you haven't done any training for the last 2 years, what do you do? Oh, so how are you doing? What certification are you taking? How do you develop yourself? How is the whole front? How is your husband? How is your wife? How are your kids? How are they doing? Those kind of connection that you also need in EQ they are the same kind of connection that bring the that makes a transformational leader different from a transactional leader. So transactional leader is based on fulfillment of lower order needs, whereas transformational is based upon the fulfillment of higher order. We said that. Transformational leader is grounded in needs of values of both leaders and subordinates, morality, provide the opportunity over time for subordinates to be changed into leaders. So the transformational leader is concerned with the skills, the development, the totality, the growth, the career growth, progression of the subordinate. And so that is very important. So for Bonds, transactional leader is initiated solely by the former leader also. It's based upon the exchange, which is based on tangible things like money, I've said it, which is extrinsic, whereas transformational leadership deals with the intrinsic values. So Barr's conclusion, it's very important for us to get the conclusion that Barr gave. In his conceptualization of leadership, Bonds places transactional and transformational leadership as either or. That was what Bonds did. Bonds said you can either be a transactional leader or you are what? A transformational leader. However, Barr said that that they are like a two continuum. So what you do is that you start as you progress in your workplace as a transactional leader, then you begin to develop yourself. Like we are doing at this training we are having now, begin to understand what does it take to be a transformational leader, and you begin to move in the continuum from the lower end, which is transactional or laissez faire, you move to transactional and you begin to move towards that. But he said, I just want to, so Barr concluded that those leaders who were more effective as leaders and who were more satisfying to their subordinate were less transactional and more transformational. What it means is that you need both. You will likely start out as a transactional leader. And so if somebody said I'm a transformational leader, it doesn't mean that it's a pure blood transformational leader. He or she has some trait or elements of transactional leadership. However, as you go ahead, you need to begin to migrate into transformational leadership. So most leaders exhibit variety of patterns of transactional and transformational, but in different amounts and intensity. So thus, a leader could exhibit both transformational and transactional leadership in varying magnitude. However, the effectiveness of such a leader would be determined by the appropriateness of the transactional and transformational mix. So what is your mix? As you have now, what is your mix? So I'd like us to move on quickly. So we will just go through these dimensions quickly, and we can be able to also bring it to the fore with the times that we are in now, which is the COVID-19 pandemic time. What are some of the features we will need to display, which are transformational leadership skills? And I told you, because of the time, we will not be able to begin to compare what the transformational leadership dimensions are vis-a-vis the transactional leadership dimensions. And so the first one we said was idealized influence. The second is inspirational motivation. The third one is intellectual stimulation. The fourth one is individualized consideration. So I brought this diagram again for you to see them. So idealized influence. So normally a leader who is high in idealized influence would be a leader that is able to set a vision for the team. A leader who is able to, show direction, who is able to also set clear goals that the subordinate would understand, and we also be able to move the subordinate towards those goals. And another attribute, or what you would call behavior of a transformational leader is that it's a positive role model. It walks the talk. It's not like, oh, go do as I say, not as I do. And so the transformational leader is a leader who is able to what? Who is able to show direction. And that is why I am always of the view that when you are a leader, you might have moved from what they call from a skill-based approach, from a technical skill to a concept, to human skill and conceptual skill. But one thing is given, that a leader, for you to be able to impart, greatly in your subordinates, it is believed that the technical aspect of the job, you understand it very well, to the extent that you can begin to relate with them, sit down, fold your sleeves, and you can begin to coach them, mentor your subordinate to become transformational leader. So this kind of leader who is an idealized influence, describe leaders who act as strong role models. I've said that they walk the talk. They are in the battlefront. They don't hide behind, and motivate subordinates to walk beyond their self-esteem. They are able to, make the subordinate do more than they expect they could have done. And so your boss will always heap praises on you with little opportunity, rather than bringing you down, be able to tell you the great things that you need to do. That is so display high standard of moral behavior. Remember what I said, morality is a key part of it. And so you must, and the values of the organization is able to tell you the values. And so every leader must know what are the core values of an organization. If you are sleeping, like in LeishTon, you have what they call the clipper values. And if I'm sleeping, I can tell you what the clipper value is. In every organization, so you need to know the mnemonic of your values in your organization. Your subordinates, it's like the national item, you need to be able to tell them, and you need to live it. You need to be living the values. You need to understand the organizational vision, the mission, the purpose. What is the purpose of your organization? And you begin to make them to see the purpose and work towards the actualization of. Leaders are consistent rather than arbitrary. A leader is not haphazard. A transformational leader who exhibits idealized influence behavior is not haphazard. It's methodical, it's meticulous, and does things in an ordered array, in an ordered manner. So these are some of the characteristics. Instill pride, it makes the subordinate feel good. Sometimes those kind of leaders, what they do in the office, in the workplace, is to go to meetings, board meetings, management meetings with their subordinates. Or when they are in meetings, they engage their subordinates, say, stand by. When I come back from this meeting, I'm going to give you feedback. So those are the kind of the behavior of an idealized influence leader. So I'm going to say, but there are a lot of behaviors that they also exhibit, which I have itemized here. They demonstrate an inclusive vision, walks the talk, address crisis head on. So as we have now, a transformational leader in a COVID-19 time, even though we are teleworking, will still be able to communicate clearly to you. We'll be able to sit you down, not having meetings for the sake of ticking the boxes that I am entering meeting. No, it's not just calling meetings. You still need to, an idealized influence leader will still need to respect the normal boundaries. When we are in the office together, when you want to send email to anybody, what do? You try to look at the calendar. The question is that, do you still do that? I said the idealized influence leader is consistent. And so those of us that are here right now in this COVID-19 time, I believe that we will go back with what we've known here and still begin to behave the way we were behaving. Those boundaries we used to maintain. So for example, your subordinates right now has kids at home, he has to do other things. Don't just take it that because he or she is at home, what you need to do right now is just send emails, just call impromptu meetings. We are going to the meeting right now, and this, you need to join me in 5 o'clock. And also, what is the closing time? If the organization has communicated 5 p.m., when somebody is teleworking, why should it change? Why will you still be calling the person at 9? An idealized influence leader will not do that. It will maintain the normal boundaries. And what you also want to do is to communicate clearly. So for example, what are the expectations? KPIs will continue. Performance appraisal will continue. Tracking of performance will continue. How do you communicate? No ambiguity. So those are the characteristics with it. Then I put some features here, which you will actually know. essential behaviors required from an ideal in a tumultuous time, in a crisis time. Reassure subordinates that obstacles, crises, or difficult times, even though they are here right now, but we will overcome. They will soon be over. And begin to tell the subordinates in terms of how the person should stay safe. You don't just score to say, oh, I gave you a job. Have you delivered? Oh, you didn't deliver. And begin to take time. And remember, that level of relationship, which is not just transactional, the organization has paid you. The organization pays you for this. Okay, you are even working from home. Well, what do? We are paying your salary. No, you must continue to live the kind of values, the kind of ways that you were living prior to this time. You must reassure. So, for example, if your organization is the one that is going to slash salary, and you get wind of it as a leader at this time, there's no need of keeping it secret. Call your subordinate, sit your subordinate down, try to understand. These are trying times. We cannot continue to live like this. The organization is not making money. And there's what they call the transformational leadership of organization. The organization must be clear right now. Are you cutting salary? Explain to employees why you need to cut salary. Are you cutting because you want to make sure that you don't tell anybody, give anybody service no longer required? And you want to continue to, you want to reduce salary so that you can accommodate people. You want to, so anything you want to do, it has to be very, very clear. And it should be consistent. And so a leader at this time, you need to, more than ever, because there's a lot of uncertainty, people are not sure if by tomorrow their job will still be available. And so there are a lot of stress. The stress hormones, the cortisol, is already on a very high level and sometimes on the on mode. And at this time, don't forget that the well-being of your subordinate is also very critical. So communicate clearly and explicitly with subordinate and discuss issues around maintenance of boundaries and possible changes or challenges. Show interest in the well-being of your subordinates, children, education, security. Children are not able to go to school right now. So how is it impacting your subordinate? And does your subordinate have a nanny? If he or she doesn't, how does it affect? And how do you cover? So those are the things that an idealized influence leader would have to consider in a tumultuous time. Go beyond self-interest. Be present in the life of your subordinate at this time. It's very critical. So I have put some idealized influence that you can put into practice. You can read this at your spare time. In terms of how do you put it into practice on your day-to-day. Let's move to inspirational motivation. Inspirational motivation really is that leader who is able to motivate and inspire the leader to the subordinate to do beyond what the subordinate ever imagined possible. It takes the subordinate to a higher pedestal. He or she always ensure that the subordinate gets feedback at the appropriate time, give performance at the right time, ensures that performance is not only at the end of the year or when a subordinate does what is wrong, but that when a subordinate does right things, you are able to say, look, I note and have that conversation. And don't always have conversation only when there is an escalation from somebody. Have one-on-one. So even in a COVID-19 time, you should still have one-on-one, not only to discuss targets. No, discuss how are you feeling, how are you doing, how are you coping, what is happening, are you able to do this, are you able to get that, are you able to do this, have you gone, so are your kids okay? So those are the things you're able to motivate. So for example, your subordinates, is he or she doing training? Currency has gone up, the dollar exchange rate now has skyrocketed. How is he or she coping with school fees and all that? So, for example, students are on holidays now. Some people are not earning salary. So, if school resumes, what is going to happen? Have those conversations. Sometimes those conversations can improve their emotional well-being. So, such leaders also inspire and motivate. So, then I want to go to in a COVID-19 time, what you need to do. So, I put a lot of these. Time is really, so essential behaviors required from an inspirational motivation leader in a crisis time. One, talk optimistically about the future. You need to talk optimistically about, we know that this is a challenging time, but we're going to come back. We're going to come back stronger. You need to do this. You need to do that. Talk enthusiastically about what needs to be accomplished. What do we need to accomplish at this time? It's very critical that we do that. Articulate a compelling vision of the future. What future do we have together in this organization? What do we know? Don't be afraid. Your job is secure. We will write this together. We will overcome. Provide an exciting image of what is essential to consider. Express confidence that goals will be achieved. So we put, inspire. What are those things? How do you put inspirational motivation to practice? Intellectual stimulation. This one is critical. I need to rush this one very quickly. Leaders stimulating subordinates to think through issues and problems for themselves. This is a leader who is able to believe, stimulate the subordinates to begin to even provide solutions to things that the subordinate wouldn't be able to provide. Give opportunity to the subordinate to be creative, to be innovative, to be able to bring ingenuity into the workplace. In a COVID-19 time, this is a challenging time. Don't believe that you know all as a leader. Still, have conversation. We know that when you are in physical presence, it's very easy to bounce things off your colleagues. Still bounce it off. Send them WhatsApp, email, quickly. What do you think about this? How do you think about this? Management is saying this. What do you think about this? Can you help me with this? Can I help you with this? Can you get me this? These are how you stimulate your leader, your subordinate at this time. We say this is a rational side of transformational. Leaders are consistent rather than arbitrary. Very critical. Let me go to some of the features that you need to imbibe in a COVID-19 time. Suggest new ways of looking at how to complete assignments like we are looking at now. LeishTon was not doing virtual training before now, but times have changed. And so as what you call an intellectual stimulation leader, you need to begin to look at it now. Does it mean that my subordinate will not do paid training because we are on a crisis time? Are there training that we'll be able to do? How will it work? Are we going to engage a vendor? Do we need to begin to look at training? So for example, if you are having regulatory training, how does it work at this time? What do we need to look at? If you are supposed to be doing interviews, some organizations now have stopped interviews entirely for job recruitment. Why not take this time for jobs that are vacant? Have a pool. Do conferencing using facilities like Zoom at this time, you need to look at the advantages of even using a virtual system. What does it mean? If you have a senior person in Kaduna, you have another one in Abuja, another one in Enugu, another one in Lagos, you can do a Zoom and bring your best interviewers to the table to interview candidates at this time. But remember, before now, it was not possible to bring everybody together. You just look for anybody who you can grab. So you must look at the upside. In risk management, we say the upside of risk. In this time, you must look at what are the positive things that you can do. And so a leader who is bullish in intellectual stimulation will be saying these things with a colleague. Encourage rethinking. How do we do things differently? If you are in a COVID-19 time, he said things should not be the way they used to be. In the post-COVID-19 time, you should be discussing with your colleague, what are those things we're going to do differently? What tools do we need to learn? I put there, putting intellectual stimulation to practice. Individualized consideration, for me, this is the game changer. This is the one that is, in fact, it is the one with whom I'm well pleased. Individualized consideration. This one is the one that talks about how the leader try to develop, how the leader is interested in terms of the development of the subordinate, in terms of empowering, in terms of giving the leader, the subordinate opportunity. Pay special attention. And in this particular individualized consideration, a leader, what the leader does is to treat each subordinate as individual. Don't put all subordinates together. Know the individual needs of the subordinates. Don't group everybody together. Know that if there's a Ronke, what does Ronke like? How does Ronke operate? Don't say because Jumoke does X, Ronke needs to be treated. Don't say because Samuel knows Excel, Daniel must know Excel, must use spreadsheet. No, if Daniel knows, how do you harness that capability? Right now we are working remote. If you have learned how to use Zoom, you are an expert. So somebody like me now, before starting this training, I was able to watch about 30 videos on Zoom. The question is, if my subordinate needs to now learn Zoom, do they need to pass through the same process? No, I have learned it for them. There's a learning curve. I should be able to put them through as quickly as possible. So leaders should also take advantage of what we have right now. There are lots of trainings, webinars. Ordinarily, you would have paid a lot of money for, but right now, encourage your subordinate. Don't say it's a working time. One of the things that I've noticed in this COVID-19 period is that people are giving excuses, I'm able to learn because I'm working. The question is that when you were doing physical working, were you not taking training leave to go for training? What is different? Why should a COVID-19 time prevent you from doing training? If you have a webinar 2 hours, a transformational leader who is bullish in individualized consideration should be able to discuss with the subordinate, like this training. Hey, please, I got this training. But look at it. Do you like it? It's something you can consider. So those are the things that a transformational leader who is high in individualized consideration would have to look at. Then, just to wrap that up, let me move to from the perspective of a crisis time. Listen attentively to the concerns of your subordinates. Help others develop their strength at this time. Promote self-development. If you have webinars, share with your subordinates and let them. Treat others as individuals rather than as a member of a group. Individuals, they have individual needs. Try to understand them. Consider individuals as having different needs, abilities, aspirations from others. And so those are some of the things. I also put it there in terms of what are some of the, how you can practice individualized consideration. I won't have time to be able to tell you the research that I did. I've done about 4 research in the area of transformational leadership. I won't be able to do that. I need to wrap up right now. And I will be able to tell you the research I did on the effect of transformational leadership on organizational effectiveness. I put it there. This slide will be sent to you. I will share the slide. So the takeaway is that the full range leadership model, particularly in the continuum, you must begin to, all these dimensions that I mentioned, individualized influence, intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation, idealized influence, attributed behavior, you need to begin to look at them, how you can improve on your transformational leadership behaviors. Remember, leadership can be learned. The issue of whether people are born, there are some people that have parents, so there are some genetic part of being intelligent and all that. However, everybody can learn. Anybody who has the mindset to learn can actually learn, and you can become a great leader. And leadership is not about position. And so don't believe that in your organization that it's only those that have position are what John Maxwell called a positional leadership that can be a leader. Even those that are middle management leader, give them opportunity, expose them. If you are going for some external meeting, take them along, expose them. If you have like 4 or 5 subordinates, rotate it among them. If you are going for external meetings, let them be able to. It is very key. But remember, the transactional leadership element, you can't throw them away. There is the Lazarus Fair, which is the one that we say, no. That is the one that the leader does not even lead at all. We have a lot of people in organization, they just live, even in some, what they call political leadership, they lead by a committee. They don't lead. They are not leading. And so don't be that kind of leader. Even if you are practicing transactional leadership, let it be contingent reward and management by exception active. Don't do the passive. Be on top of your employees. Make sure that you are able to set the goals at the beginning of the year, monitor it. Don't just be excited of doing appraisal at the end of the year. And so that is what I will say. These are my collection of books. We have the Handbook of Leadership, the one that's starting from the 1970s to the 80s up to the 90s, which is first edition, second edition, third edition, and fourth edition. And these are only transformational leadership books. But remember, I said from the beginning, we have learned emotional intelligence skills. I said it is not enough. You need, in that your repertoire, you need transformational leadership behaviors. And I'm saying here right again that it is still not enough. Next week, we are going to unveil and delve into the world of authentic leadership. You must bring your authentic self to work every day. And so every leader must bring their authentic self. In a COVID-19 time, you must bring your authentic self into your remote work. You must be authentic. Don't be dubious. Don't try to be smart by half. And that is what I will just say with regard to that. I have these are the hard copies. There are also a lot of soft copies. If you want more recommendation for books, and if you've received the emotional intelligence slide, you will see that I pasted almost like 20 books. Those ones are books that I have. And if you want more recommendations, I can also do that for you. And there are a lot of articles that you can also use. And I think at this point, I will just use the next 3 minutes to take questions. So, Mr. Kilo, if you can just let me know if there are any questions there for me. I would really want to answer it at this time. But before I go, let me just display. We have a lot of competencies in your organization. If you think that we can add value, we have Mr. Kilo is an expert in a lot of management area. He's in our faculty. Myself, I'm also here. And the beauty of it is that in a virtual world, there's no geographical boundary. Some of my professors at my schools in the US, in Hong Kong, they are willing to even participate in the LeishTon faculty, because with virtual learning, there is really no boundary. And so if you think we can add value to you, please knock on our door, but please don't miss the authentic leadership, because by the time we finish authentic leadership, you will know that EI, transformational leadership, and authentic leadership will still not be enough. You will need more. Howard Gardner in 1983 said, you will need multiple intelligences. By the time we finish these 4 programs in this series, we will tell you at the end whether you need more of that. And so at this time, I will really say thank you, but let's go if there are any questions at this time. So I want to stop sharing. So, okay. Hello? Okay, I'm not seeing.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. It's highly insightful. And I believe that our participants enjoyed it. We have some few questions. And
okay, I want you to your video to be on so that they can see you.
Okay. Hope I can be seen now.
Let me see. Yeah, I think they can see you now.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so the first question came from Suleiman Ibrahim. He said, Doc, from one of the features of transformational leadership, which says that it is based on mutual reciprocal relationship between the leader and the subordinate.
Yeah.
Does it mean it gives the subordinate conformity to speak up when a leader makes a mistake, most especially in a gathering?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Sorry, you said what's the name of the person?
It's Suleiman Ibrahim.
Okay, Suleiman. Okay. So thank you very much. That is a very brilliant question. I really appreciate that question. As a transformational leader, and that is why I said that if you have just transformational leadership behaviors or skills, it's not enough. And because as a transformational leader, one of the things you would have learned is what you call individualized consideration, which is that you want your subordinates to self-develop, and intellectual stimulation because you want your subordinate to speak up, to be creative, to be innovative, give them opportunity. However, emotional intelligence tells us that when you want to relate with your boss, particularly when you are in an external environment, you must understand the environment that you are or where you are, and you must begin to apply what you call the situational approach to leadership, which is another leadership that we did not speak about here. To say that your intelligence now will now come in EQ to know that I can correct my boss. However, EQ made you understand that you should also make your boss to do what? To look good. When you go back to the office, you can make some correction. But transformational leadership also make it understand that when you are a boss, if you know that this your subordinate is the one that is technically sound, that knows the job, that understands the rudiment and the fundamentals of what you are going to deliver, a transformational leader who is very high intellectual stimulation will have to sit down and say, look, I have trained my subordinate to deliver, and be very satisfied and be very happy that right in that forum, my subordinate is going to be happy. Because if your subordinates are doing well, it means that you are doing well. Because leadership is about influence. And if you are able, and people see that you are able to grow your people to take over from you, then that is the kind of leader. However, a subordinate must know where he or she needs to interject and when it needs to be skillful in terms of when feedback. Remember, feedback doesn't only go from the boss to the subordinate. Subordinate can also give feedback, but how feedback is given is very, very important, and it's good for you to know that. So I think that is how I would answer that question.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Then there's another from Peter Shodipo. Can we apply transformational leadership to all subordinates? How do you deal with a lazy or difficult subordinate?
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Shodipo. That is also a brilliant question. So the truth of the matter is that every leader is leadership. You are steering the ship as a leader. And so a leader is not just a position. You are supposed to harness and bring out the best in your subordinate. And so the toolkits, the dimensions that what you would call that Bernard Bass has given is that you can always know where your subordinate is and what you need to apply at any time. Remember, the beauty of the full range leadership, and that is why we always call it the full range leadership model. And so if you have a subordinate who likes to be what you call followed up in everything, you might say that he's lazy, but it might mean that that leader, that subordinate is operating at a lower level of capacity. Or it might also be that, have you been able to study that subordinate? Whether he has a low cortisol, is he facing stress? Because if the stress hormone is on the on state, then there will be a challenge. Or what we also said, are you sure the brain of the subordinate is functioning at optimal level? Or does the subordinate need training? Does he or she need coaching? Does he need mentoring? And so you must begin to look at that and know that it is also your responsibility. Leadership comes with a lot of responsibility. And at the end of the day, there are those who are not fit for certain environment. Like they will say, not everybody wants to go to school. Not everybody wants to be a lawyer. Not everybody wants to be a doctor. But you must be seen to have done your part. The first thing I do when I go into early leadership position, when I was working, I tell my subordinate that if I am leaving this organization and they have to go and bring somebody from outside to come and replace me, I have failed, you have failed. And everything I will continue working with my subordinate from the day one I've joined any organization. Is in most organizations where I work, right from even the early days, they used to call me Rabbi. In fact, I want to pass everything that I have to you, to be very frank, because if what they call common good, if what I know you know it, then the work will be better. But it is important for leaders to know that it is part of their responsibility to look at these dimensions, particularly individualized consideration. Do you treat Paul like, oh, when Peter that just left and we recruited you, he came in and he was running, you know, but today you have come in and you are looking, I need to teach you how to do report. But remember, people are different. Why don't you take, you know, look at Paul, who just came in, as Paul and not the Kesenian that has left the organization? I think that is how we answer that question. But it will get to an extent that if the person is not teachable, if you cannot stimulate that person, if you cannot put that person through training, but don't forget, if that person wants to choose training, make sure that a part of your appraisal, personal development, you know what he's choosing. What are those areas where he has gaps that he needs to fill? What are those areas where the competencies that you think he needs? You should channel his training, his development towards that. Don't be a stranger to the life. So you must be present in the life of your subordinates. That's how we answer that.
Okay. We still have more, but
we need to, yes.
Yeah, most of them are appreciations, but
Yes.
there's one, we need the highlights and characteristics of transformational leaders as against other forms of leadership.
Yeah.
How can a leader balance both transactional and transformational leadership? It's coming from Yemi.
Okay, so let me answer that one. Maybe that will be the last one. The other ones, we can always take them offline. You can balance it by knowing that, to be very frank, the starting point is transactional. So everybody in the workplace have a transactional relationship. So you are employed. You are not doing a non-governmental work. Even you are being paid. So there's a transactional element, right? But it's just to begin to know that you need to move to the higher ground, and knowing that at the end of the day, you need to begin to develop yourself with this kind of training. And sometimes it might be that even within your team, invite people. It might not be LeishTon, it might be LeishTon to come and speak with your team. You can arrange that with HR, even if, so it is important for us to know that if there are learnable skills, there are learnable behaviors, and once we learn them, we'll continue to improve. It's just like a child that is growing up. We learn to walk, we will first of all crawl, and as you see, you begin to walk, begin to talk, begin to run, and that is how leadership is. Leadership is a learnable skills. But we need to always know that, consciously know that we need to exhibit more, that we are in a continuum. That continuum starts from the extreme left, transactional, extreme right, transformational. And we want to move to become more effective towards the other extreme of transformational.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I think you have done a great deal about on the questions we have asked so far. Stephen is just expressing an opinion. He said that I'm of the opinion that the environment you work dictates the type of leadership style to adopt. Is this a fair assumption? And then Mr. Pius, you wrote so, what you have here is quite long. My question is, how does a leader who wants to practice this skill, but is limited by the conflicting pressure from the organizational environment? The truth is that we cannot answer
environment.
all of them at once. So by the time we are going to send the materials and the update, we are going to incorporate a session that will answer all these questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okilo, can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Okay,
so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, for participating. And please stay safe and know that these times are challenging times. And if you have colleagues, if you have parents, if you have those that are in the vulnerable group, speak to them. If you have uncles, extended relationship, I think this is the time for, even though we are maintaining social distancing, you can still call people psychologically. People really need people to speak with them at this time. Please do that. And if you can also extend a little financial aspect in terms of palliative to your loved ones, no matter how small, I will encourage that. And please stay safe. And I hope to see you next week, Wednesday, same time, for the Authentic Leadership Program. And I will say thank you, and God bless you, and God bless Nigeria.
Thank you so much, everyone.